Force, Luke.
Sometimes truth isn't good enough.
I feel the need for speed.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna?
Cause it's their time. Their time. Up there. Down here, it's our time. It's our time down here.
Okay. All right. Everybody, welcome back. I am your host, Winter Wolf, and we're going to be doing FrostCast episode 17, of course, with the lovely and talented King Z, who's going to present himself in the next couple of seconds. It was a bit of a slow-ish news week until about 4 hours ago, and I just want to have like a 2-minute chat about what we were just talking about pre-show, just to get it documented here. King Z hit me with a pretty big headline in the middle of the workday. I almost had to take the rest of the day off. I was kind of shell-shocked by it because I'm like equally parts. Oh, great. This is fantastic. Awesome. And then the other half was more like I just want to crawl into a corner and die because the poor guy's like 0 for 4 at this point with coming on to IPs and projects. But King Z, welcome. And tell everybody what we were talking about brief, and then we'll jump into the actual cast.
So the Paladin of the Nerds had a huge announcement where he is being linked to Star Wars. Now, nothing has been signed, of course, because they're still writing, but it's linked to the new future trilogy, the Rey trilogy that they're planning. And this, he's tied to the writer's like, this is my key casting, like one of those, like, I want this to happen or I might leave type thing. So we're actually looking forward to see Cavill join the galaxy far, far away.
I was going to say, you didn't mention who actually, the King of the Nerds was. You were just going by the moniker, assuming everybody knew.
That's right.
That's okay.
Henry Cavill has been linked to going to Star Wars in the future trilogy.
Dude, that's exciting. And like we were just talking about, it'd be interesting to see which side of the Force, if either, that they put him on. I mean, they almost have to put him in a Force-related role, right? Like they can't just dunk him in there as like some rando bureaucrat for like the New Republic or like some kind of. He'd be good as an ISB agent if in some kind of new Empire role, like as like a secure ISB enforcer kind of guy. I could see that. He's he's built. He could be intimidated. That'd be kind of cool. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm hopeful for him more than anything.
Yeah, I do believe he's going to be carrying a red lightsaber in the series.
You said that pre-show, and I'm like, oh man, this dude finally get a chance to do the hero thing on screen again. They're gonna be like, nah, bro, red saber.
Okay.
Oh, well, anyways, we'll keep you guys posted on that. But without any further ado, like I said, because it was a bit of a slow-ish news week, and we do try to not rehash some of the stuff because we know we're in the middle of the week and it's tough to like kind of get in with those topics from the end of last week by Wednesday the following. So trying something new, going to do a dedicated movie spotlight segment because we've bounced this movie around by name at least 4 times in the last 5 podcasts, at least 4 times. So when I was struggling for a topic list, I said, okay, I think it's probably just time to talk about Back to the Future for an hour. So here we are. We're going to talk about Back to the Future. And if we have enough time, I think we talk about part 1 for the whole hour. Don't get me wrong. But I'm down to talk trilogy and just how it's increasingly climbed the list of trilogies as I've gotten a little bit older. I've come to appreciate and enjoy part 3 a lot more, and after in seeing how some of these other trilogies have wrapped up. And I'm thinking of things like Matrix Revolutions come to mind first and foremost as like weak trilogy enders that have kind of allowed this other one to kind of creep up. But dude, the Back to the Future for me, I remember owning the VHS tape, as a kid. Yep. I remember rocking it like almost on a loop on Saturdays and Sundays. It's one of those movies you can quote. You still remember the soundtrack and the main theme. I hum it in the car from time to time, like merging into traffic. You get to that one part, you know what I'm talking about, and then you gun it. It's just fun. It's one of those movies that they just don't make anymore. That makes me sad. But what are your early memories of Back to the Future for you?
So I remember that my dad brought it home from the movie store. Like, we didn't go to the theater to see this one, and he brought it home, and we really didn't have any high hopes. We didn't really know what it was about or anything like that, and we watched it, and it was just such a fun movie to watch. Right. And it just kind of gets into the zeitgeist of pop culture, 80s culture, and it was just the way it was built, and then the sequels, and then like the perfect casting of Michael J. Fox when he was on his rise up
Yeah.
through the ranks of Hollywood. So, I mean, it's just one of those great movies that they just, like you said, don't make anymore. They don't write like this anymore.
And when King Z says write like this anymore, we're just not even just talking about entertaining. Obviously it is. It's technically flawless. And you and I have talked about this a bunch as writers ourselves on screen and on the novel format. A lot of that craft is missing in the things we watch. And I was saying before we jumped on, I just managed to watch like the first hour of it over again. I just wanted to touch up on a couple of things, a couple of quotes, in the first 8 minutes of this movie, they establish like 6 setups that eventually get paid off by the end. In 8 minutes, dude. They do the bit with the plutonium, with the, no McFly's ever amounted anything in Hill Valley. That's going to change. You get the setup with the doc never having vented anything. Then it works. You get the setup with the Libyans that stole plutonium that gets paid off literally like 15 minutes later. But I mean, they're so efficient with it's just shy of 2-hour runtime. They're so efficient with that setup that when they hit the fun and games part for Act 2, dude, it's all fun and games. Like they don't have to introduce new characters at 30 and 40 and 50 minutes. Like, no, you're just to the races. Here we go. And it hits that end point that you're always talking about too, that second, the third act where it has that rise into the climax and then it just resolves steadily out. So it's technically flawless, I would say.
It is considered a near perfect script.
Yeah.
And like the other things, like the little small nuances in it. One of the great scenes, we all know that he has to get back to the future and they need the power 1.21 gigawatts. And the only
how's a gigawatt?
Without plutonium, he's like, the only way we know this is if we knew when and where a bolt of lightning is going to strike. So the part about that is great because one, you remember back when he leaves high school, he's with his girlfriend, and there's the lady out there, save the clock tower. And he gives them the flyer that has it on there. So now he doesn't have to memorize the time that's on the clock tower. So he doesn't have to like the super memory or anything. He has this flyer. But here's the other part. He doesn't absentmindedly just put the flyer in his pocket and keeps it. There's a interaction with his girlfriend that makes it more practical of why he kept it. She's like, well, I'm staying at my grandmother's house and here's her phone number, and writes a phone number on it. So this is a reason why he would have kept the flyer instead of just absentmindedly putting it in his pocket. So it is just like those little things you don't see anymore. It has like they'll insert like a whole nother person just to move the plot forward, like a whole plot.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll waste 8 minutes doing it too. Right.
Yeah. Just to move the plot forward. Where this one, it's nuanced, it flows, and it works well.
I love that bit too. That's what I was going to write down like scene by scene notes. And I'm like, dude, I know this movie well enough. I don't need to write this shit down. That was one of the things I was going to mention too about it's a love note that ties in the time on the clock. He has the interaction. When it comes up later, we know like when they then lay out what the plan's going to be, we're like, okay, we know exactly what it's going to be. They're going to do some funky thing with an antenna. It's going to zap the car and, hopefully it works and he gets to 88 miles an hour and he gets to go home. Like I love one of the things I love most about this movie is the title, right? It's Back to the Future, right? It sounds stupid, right? But it's perfect because he literally needs to get back to the future. And I love it for the simplistic, like literal sense of what it is, but it sounds so goofy, but it works, and it's one of the things I like most about it. And that's why I like when it's talking about Back to the Future 2, I'm like, all right, is it 2 like TWO, or is it 2 because it's happening again? Like it's I don't know. It's goofy fun all over. It's the 80s, bro. It's 1986. It's like a golden era of like good films where like people that actually gave a damn about storytelling all had jobs apparently, and they were all doing the right thing. I'll tell you this though, it did hurt me a little to see Kathleen Kennedy's name as one of the executive producers at the beginning underneath Frank Marshall, her husband, and Steven Spielberg. I'm like, can we just omit that? I mean, we're rewriting history all over the place, left, right, and sideways. Can we just white out over that name? In like 50 of my favorite movies, please.
It's actually what built her coattails to get where she is today, is riding the coattails of movies like this, The Goonies and stuff like that. But let's leave her in the past. Her name might be on it, but her name didn't ruin it like it has Disney.
She was a location scout at best. That's what she was. It's in the interviews. It's all out there.
To be an executive producer, you have to bring one of 3 things to the film: money, an actor, or a location. So,
and you know what did the wolf just say? Locations, because it's in all the interviews. So, but yeah, let's not waste any more to my Back to the Future time with Kathleen Kennedy. Dude, I love the setup to this movie, right? Because it introduces you right off the rip. Like the first, you get that sweeping shot through Doc Brown's lab, and you can. It's weird already. It's got a million clocks. I love that it's on theme instantly because it's time. Here we go. Okay, it's a bunch of clocks, and Marty McFly walks in, and right away you know who this kid is. He's got the skateboard. He's got the little headphones. He's hooking up his electric guitar to a speaker that's taller. You're a little taller than I am, but you're about 6'1", right? The speaker's like 4 feet taller than you. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, this is gonna be funny. And sure as shit, he's cranking the amp, and I'm like, here we go. And then wow, pulls him across the room. So it's funny right away. And of course, then he lies his way out. He's like, oh, Doc, you left all your shit on all week. And the doc's like, oh yeah, don't use that. It might blow.
Yeah, it's not ready yet. It might blow.
Right.
I'll keep that in mind.
I keep that in mind. But I mean, it's all they layered all that comedy over right away, establishing that, you know, this is the cool kid in high school. You know what I mean? He's in the band. He's got he's perpetually late for school kind of thing. He's got this bond with some wacko scientist. So it gives you a bunch of information, but you never feel bogged down. And I feel like that's another thing movies get wrong a lot now, is when they expositionize and data dump everything in a movie now. There's nothing fun about it. It's like you're getting read like the fact sheet. You're like, okay, here's Kingsley, you know, 40s, tall, white guy, veteran. Like they literally just give you all that crap, and they don't let you infer anything for yourself. So I don't know. What do you think about? What was your first impression of Marty? Like all-American kid, like kind of like goofy looking, I guess, because he's Michael J. Fox and he's high five.
Standard high school kid. Like if you knew Michael J. Fox coming into this, he was really big on a show called Family Ties.
Family Ties.
Yep. And this is one of the movies that catapulted his career out of the small screen to the big screen. But he's known for playing that high school kid. Now his characters are totally different from when he played Alex P. Keaton in Family Ties.
Yeah.
So when he's Marty McFly here, he's like he comes from the slacker family who like kind of just gets by. He's associated with it, but he wants more.
Yeah.
But like him coming into Dot's place, and you see all the clocks and like all the weird gizmos. And the thing is, after he plays his note and gets flown across the room, he sits up, his glasses are like half off. He's like, rock and roll.
That's what I'm talking about, man. The vibes are there like from jump with that. I'm glad you mentioned the slacker family too, because again, that's a clever tie-in to the whole, not the theme of the movie, but kind of like one of the things we expect out of the time travel stories, the butterfly effect, like the ripple. You know, we see his status quo, and the status quo is a normal kid. He's late to school. He's into rock music. He's got the girlfriend. He's on the run from the assistant principal who's got it out for him. He's got a bunch of tardies. And we know that the principal's kind of had it out for his family, because in that first key interaction, he's like, you know, your father was a slacker when he went here too. No McFly's ever amounted to anything. And then they literally do the thing. Usually the thing is when they say the title of the movie in the thing. This thing was they literally do the premise stated thing. And Marty McFly's response is, history's about to change. Like, dude, that's like the effing caption from like the video cassette box. Like that's the tagline, is history's about to change. Like it's brilliant that that was in the movie first, and then they threw that shit on the cover later, you know, but it literally tells the audience like, hey, this is what we're doing here. Like, let's rock and roll. This dude's a minor antagonist, but he's setting up the big change that Marty's going to go through. And then we see that ripple effect, because Doc warns him, you know, you got to stick with, after that, we'll talk about their meeting like in the past, but like Doc warns him, you got to stay in the house. You can't interact with anybody. Anything you do can change shit later. And we all know that. Like, we've all been around the sci-fi block. We get that. We know that convention.
That's the premise of the old, what was that? Twilight Zone episode where the guy goes back in the past and he doesn't do anything, but then he's being chased and he's running and he steps on a worm. Yep. And then when he gets back to the future, everything's changed.
Aliens, dinosaurs, all kinds of weird shit.
Yeah. Wild. It all started with like a bird didn't come down there and eat that worm, which led to them hunting there, which led people to settle there to those good hunting ground. And just that one worm changed everything that he knew about life. And this is the same premise of creating a paradox or
temporal paradox.
But if you actually think about it, it's just creating different timelines. Because once you go back in time, you can never go back to the time that you left. You create
which we learned in part
timeline.
2, which we get diagrammed in part 2, which I one of my favorite things about it.
And
But
also
I love
recently
the fact that we see
in
that.
the Terminator series, where they outlined it.
Salvation.
In
Not
episode
Salvation.
3.
Zero. Was that
Zero.
what it was?
Yeah, Terminator Zero.
Animation was Zero. That was a dope show, by the way. Go check out our worky work on that. We talked
That's
about
right.
that a lot.
Go check our back catalog.
Back catalog. But I want to talk a little bit more about the family because I love seeing them status quo in the beginning. Dad's a slacker, greasy loser guy that never became anything more than George McFly getting picked on in high school. Biff is his boss, still stealing his homework, crashes his car, blames him for it. He goes, who's going to pay for my dry cleaning? I spilled a beer when that car hit me. Came out of nowhere. You know, mom's kind of bloated and an alcoholic and not living her best life. And obviously, clearly regrets that marriage. 100% regrets that shit. And his brother and sister are kind of wormy losers. You know, one of them looks like he's 30 and I shouldn't say working at McDonald's doesn't make you lose. Do your job, earn your honest money. I take that back. I apologize. But he's meant to be, you feel the vibe for the families. They're just getting by, like you said. Like they're nobody. And we see how that changes based on the one piece of advice that Marty gives his dad when he goes back about when his dad's talking about, I wanted to write, but I'm too embarrassed to share my work. Marty tells him, if you set your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. And that kind of laid the stones for George McFly to become somebody different, and it's ironic though. And one of the things I went back to listen when I just rewatched is, I thought maybe it would be George McFly that told Marty that present day, but it wasn't. It was Doc that told him that. Like he says it to Jennifer outside when he's nervous and having the same feelings about sending in his audition tape. He's like, what if I send it and they think I suck? You know what I mean? And then he says, Doc told me if I set my mind to it, I can do anything. I want to know how they met in present day, minus this exchange from the movie. Like, how did they get together? Like, that's an interesting story I'd need to see. Where do you meet that guy and befriend him? There's a 70-year difference. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But it was the 80s. I guess you
It was the 80s. And, you left your doors unlocked, serial killers running everywhere. And, you just befriend the weird guy with white hair at the end of the block.
Time machines in their garage out of DeLoreans. Right. Got it. You just do that. But I love all the character work that we get so quickly at the beginning of that movie. What I wanted to ask you, though, is what do you think of the science in this movie? Just about like the time travel as they lay it out. Too complicated, not complicated, just enough, makes sense, doesn't have to make sense. You give me some thoughts. What do you think of the whole gigawatt situation there? What do you think of the flux capacitor? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the gigawatt thing was pretty much made up. Yeah. They were trying to talk about how much power a nuclear reaction actually could have, and I mean it was a common theme. Like we were entering into the nuclear age at the time. You have Ghostbusters who have their
unlicensed particle accelerator
on their backs. So this is just another take on what nuclear energy to produce. But the big thing is the flux capacitor, the thing that makes time travel possible. Remember, he got the vision for it when he was hanging a light. He fell and hit his head.
He was hanging a clock.
He was hanging a clock.
Yes, even better.
And he hit his head on, and he had the vision of it, and then he created it.
I love that reveal. I love that reveal when he's like, I drew this. And then Marty goes into the car and he flips it on. You can see it. And Doc's like, Scott, it worked. Yeah.
The time circuits.
Yeah. Love it. Everything they do here just has that A, B done. It's like it sets up and then it pays off. It sets up and then it pays off. I love that. I love him telling him about the whole, the butterfly effect-y kind of stuff and the potential for paradox. I am glad they did not try to explain the flux capacitor. I'm glad they did not try to explain plutonium beyond it's a special power source that we need. Because like you said, it was the 80s, coming out of Cold War, nuclear age, all that good stuff. But what I do like is they worked in a joke to that effect. Like when he says, oh, Doc, all we need is some plutonium. He's like, Marty, I'm sure in 1985, plutonium's available in every corner store, but in 1955, it's a little hard to come by. Like, that's pretty funny. Like,
which was actually a callback to them talking before he goes back in time.
Right.
He was talking about 1955. He's like, I don't know what life was like in 1955, but here in 1985, you can't just walk into your corner store and buy plutonium.
That's what I'm saying. It was a perfect joke to set up what, like Doc, because, Doc's an old man by this point. Like, he's middle-aged, probably 50 or whatever, by the time the movie starts. So he's talking about, who's the president in 85? And Marty McFly's all proud that he knows the answers, like Ronald Reagan.
The actor?
The actor. It's hilarious because you could see that response because Doc's blown away by, the portable television camera. He's blown away by the DeLorean when he sees, and this is a guy that has like a pretty nice convertible for the day, but like the DeLorean looks like a fucking UFO.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? In any day.
And that's what the kids thought it was when he crashed.
Right. Oh, yeah, when
he showed them, it crashed into their barn.
He gets his dad to shoot him. Like, that's the best part. He shoot him before he mutates into human form. That's good shit. And again, that was a setup and a payoff because remember that was where he crashed was what the mall was, 30 years prior. And they talk about, old man Peabody owned a pine tree farm and he's crazy about selling pine trees. So, and then it becomes the Pine Tree Mall.
Farmland here.
As far as the eye can see. Dude, that was a great scene. And so it's everything they do circles back to something, and it's always tightly efficient. Like when I was watching when I was doing my rewatch today, I was trying to think of like wasted time or a wasted scene that didn't do those things we're always talking about writing wise. Develop character, move the plot forward. Pick one. Like try. I mean, on the spot. Like just try to find one that's like glaringly out of place. It's tough.
No,
it's really tough.
Everything has a purpose, even though it doesn't feel forced.
Right. Especially that it doesn't feel forced, I would say.
But you're talking about the mall. Did you see the change at the end of the movie?
I'd have to go back and
so
rewatch.
it was the Twin Pines Mall.
Oh, it was just one?
But he ran over the pine when he went back to time, and it was the One Pine Mall.
Dude, I've never noticed that. You're right, because the DeLorean, when he's hauling ass out of the barn, completely runs it down. And then the old guy's like, "You killed my pine!" And he fires off another shell at him.
Yeah,
I love that part. I love that shit so much, man. When we were talking about pacing again too, and how when we talk about horror movies, there's a convention that says something's got to happen every 10 minutes, like there's got to be a jump or a tension thing or something like that, and the whole plot point, save the cat stuff comes up in like dramas and action flicks and things like that. I'll be damned if the theme music doesn't kick in and he hits the 88 mile an hour mark at like exactly 25%. You know what I mean? Like it's like it's right on cue. The bit with the principle about history going to change, and then you get that inciting incident there, and then boom, there's the gate, and it's a literal gate this time. It's time. It's a portal. Time travel gate. And I'm like, dude, I love when shit hits like that because it's. At the risk of things being formulaic, I feel like unless you have something that's like crazy high concept like Rocky or like The Godfather or something, you really do need to kind of follow the rails to a degree to tell like that effective kind of genre story. You know what I mean? Like if this was just allowed to meander for 2.5 hours, I think it loses a lot of its thrill, a lot of its punch. So I don't mind that it hits things at a certain point, and then there's the setback comes or the false victory comes at a certain point. Because I know it's going to ram back up and I'm going to be along that roller coaster as it goes, so I'm with that kind of thing. Any comments or kind of thoughts on just like formula versus free writing or just like experimental? Like, what do you think? Like, I think it works both ways depending on what you're doing.
So back then they didn't really have the formula set like it is now.
Right.
It was actually one of the movies that helped set the formula that made popular movies. But it was just a known, like the screenwriters knew how to shape a story in a certain format that can keep audiences engaged and informed and entertained all at the same time.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt on. And I think this does this because it gives you so much to chew on at all the different points that it shows up. I mean, let's. Like when we get a little deeper into the movie and he's in 1955, he realizes it's not a dream. Like, holy hell, like the doc might be dead. I watched him get shot up by the Libyans. I jumped into the DeLorean. I bailed. I got no plutonium to get back. Now the car won't start. I'm in 1955 and they got the Mr. Sandman jingle on. And it's total culture shock, obviously, for him because he's seeing the town he lives in dated 30 years prior. So like his housing development isn't even there. It just got the sign and then it's a dirt road. The neighborhood he lives in literally isn't there yet, And so when he heads downtown and it's a bunch of 1950s, like all steel cars. We got a kid bouncing around on spring shoes. The Texaco station has a fully manned crew of like 8 people that come out when the bell dings and the car pulls in. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here? But
where's that
the
today?
World,
I would love to have a service like that. They come out, wash your windows.
$18 a gallon, bro. Keep it in your pocket.
Yeah.
No. Well, I'm good. I'll pump my own gas.
You know, the state of Oregon, you're not allowed to pump your own gas. It's full serve.
Yeah, blue state hell makes sense to me. Peace. That's not what I said. Sorry to our viewers if you're from the great state of Oregon. But anyway, so he's got the culture shock thing. And when he goes into the diner, he gets run through the ringer by the diner owner, who's a funny character in and of itself, because you can tell the difference between how adults talk to kids in 55 versus 85 versus 25. Hey kid, you gonna fucking order something or what? He doesn't drop an F-bomb on him, but you know what I mean? Like he's gruff and he ain't screwing around. Yeah. And then he meets his dad, which is hilarious.
Are you back from the Navy? What he was wearing?
With the fucking life preserver. It was too funny. And then he runs. What's the joke? He goes, "You gonna order something?" He's like, "Let me get a Pepsi free." A Pepsi, you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
Someone no sugar.
Just give me your coffee.
Biggest cup of coffee ever.
And he's like,
and then he just he dumps change on the counter, and the guy takes like 8 cents. It's like he takes nothing, right?
Yeah, he takes a dime.
It was a different era, man, different day. But I love the bit where, again, this is one of those clever touches that you're always talking about, or not clever, but like subtle. He's all frustrated. He does this. He puts the head down in the hand, and when you get it's either a pan back or they pan over. Fucking George McFly is sitting next. His dad, his young dad, is sitting next to him doing the same effing thing. And it always makes me think about that one scene in Jaws where Brody's at the kitchen table after like the first or second attack, and he's been out of shape, and he notices his young son mimicking his actions at the same time across the table, and they have a hug, and it's all a nice father-son moment, which I'm a big fan of. But I just thought this was like a comic take on that, so I appreciate it. I'm like, okay, this is kind of funny. And then we meet
the whole lean forward, and like his face is like behind him, and then comes in front of him.
Yeah. And then when they turn around, here's Biff, because of course Biff shows up, and Biff might be one of my favorite comedic antagonists in a drama of all time, because he's such a dick. But literally everything I've ever read about that guy from people that have met him at conventions or work with him,
nicest guy in the
nicest
world.
Guy on the planet, Keanu Reeves level of nice. Yep. Hands down across the board.
But plays one of the greatest bullies of all time.
To this day, every now and again, I have to grab my kid and hit him with the "Hello, McFly." Anybody home when he's not listening? I love that dude. I love Biff so much because he's the quintessential dick bully of the era. Like you can see it. He's got the greaser vibe. He's got the black convertible. He's got a bunch of minions with him. He's dude. He's probably a sex offender in training. The way he's grabbing on Lorraine in school when that happens, I'm like, bro, how the fuck does that happen?
It's 1955.
1955, bro. That's how it happened.
Yep.
But he's calling out the McFly. And like he's talking to George, but Marty turns around. We get their first bully exchange, and then we see the difference between Marty and his dad. Like Marty, when he's gets the nerve up, throws that little heel kick back a little and trips Biff on his way out the door.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, that's ballsy. This dude's like 6'5", 190, 205. He can
like
probably gonna bury you.
Starting linebacker on the high school football team, easy size.
Oh, dude, yeah. And he's probably been pulled from a couple of games for like unnecessary roughness and shit. Like you can tell he's a psycho without a doubt. Right. He almost gets into it with Biff at the diner or whatever it is. But then he uses his head and kind of gets the F out. No, wait, does that happen?
No. The diner guy gets him out.
Oh, that's right. Because then Marty's chasing him, and that's how the whole my bad. I skipped like 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, you're thinking of like when he gets chased out.
Yes,
and then
that's what I did.
And we get to the skateboarding scene. I
love that. Well, I have to pump the brakes because there's a lot. We got to talk like second inciting incident, really, because it's like it's the incident that set him to the past, but then the thing that sets up why it's a complicated road now. Not even to get back, but he has to set the line right because he messed up and had that interaction with his dad. Had to follow him to see where he was going, and sure as shit, he upends the scenario that his mother had described him early, because we needed to talk about that then. Mom describes how she met the dad. Grampy hit him with the car. But in this timeline, he does not. He hits Marty, who pushed George out of the way.
Yep.
So now mom doesn't have the Florence Nightingale effect hots for George McFly, who she should. It's weirdly passed on to Marty, who she doesn't know is her son, obviously. So it's not that weird. It's not like, it's kind of like Luke and Leia kissing weird. Like they didn't know. I gotta give them a pass.
It was like the scene where he's hearing his mother's voice.
Yeah,
and it was like, oh, I had this weird dream that I went back in the past, and she's like, you're fine now. You're back in 1955.
Good
He's like, 1955.
Click, and it turned the light on, and of course, it's Leah Thompson in all of her '80s gorgeousness. Because my God, was she a good-looking lady in back in the '80s for sure. And she's obviously the opposite of who his mother was presenting as an older woman.
Yes,
where the older woman is like, girls chasing boys. I never sat in a car with boys or called a boy.
Yeah. Never
she has de-pantsed him.
Yeah.
She has de-pantsed him against her mother's knowledge, doesn't know. Because the end of that scene, when he falls out of the bed, she's like, quick, put your pants on. It's my mother. Like, oh, okay. So you're a bit of a pedo. Okay, I got it. I understand what's going on. I mean, not a pedo because she was a kid too, but whatever. It was just weird. But again, it's all that funny built-in. Well, dude, I guess it's technically a subversion of what we were told up front.
Yeah.
You know, like Lorraine said who she was.
Dude, it's all over your underwear.
It's all over your underwear. I've never seen purple underwear before. Like, dude, this is very cleverly done. I like it. I'm digging it. So we're in that middle block there, and the entire fun and games bit is him trying to figure out how to trick George McFly into nutting up and being forward with Lorraine to ask her to the dance that he has to get her to go to.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
because he sees the picture. Because he runs and meets Doc after. After that exchange, and then he's like, let me see that picture again, and then it's like you see like his brother's arm is gone at this point.
He's fading out
because he's changed the timeline where if they don't get together, him nor his brother nor his sister would ever exist. Right. So
you get the ticking clock mechanism is now fully in effect on top of the ticking clock of hitting the lightning bolt at the proper time. So this isn't an open-ended situation. He doesn't have the whole school year to work this thing out. He's got like, I think he said it's like a week or something like that. I can hang out in 1955 for a week. I'll see the sights. I'll see the town, blah, blah, blah. You got like 3 days, dude, a week, whatever.
Yeah. He's like, you can't go out and meet anyone.
Right.
Anything you do or interact with will change the past.
Have you talked to anybody else?
And that's when he finds out about the pictures after that comment.
Yeah. I like that. I'm digging all of that. I like watching. The fun and games part is they always aim to make that like, this is the part that's supposed to make you want to come back and see the movie again. Like you're along for that ride. And a lot of movies always suffer. Books do this too. They suffer from that sagging middle, the miserable midpoint, all those kind of tropey things. But I can't think of any part of this movie in the middle that doesn't suitably entertain me while it's pushing things forward. Like the whole part where he has to convince George to ask Lorraine out, even though that attempt fails. He does the bit where he puts the radiation suit back on, breaks into George's house, and then blasts him with a headphone full of like Van Halen. And then George McFly thinks he's getting his brain melted by Darth Vader because he's a sci-fi geek. You know what I mean? So it's funny and moving the thing forward from the planet Vulcan with a hairdryer, his sister's hairdryer in his belt, you know? And I'm like, dude, that's funny. It just works. It's never, and it wasn't wasted. There was a point that they had to go through the theatrics of that interaction of him trying to be like, you have to do this or I'll destroy you, you know?
Yeah, because
he didn't do that.
Because he sets it out, because he talks about that he writes stories about like outer space and stuff like that. And then he's trying to get him to ask Lorraine out. He's like, no one on this planet is going to make me convince me to ask her out. And he's like, this planet.
And then he slams the door and goes in the house and Marty's left to his own devices. And again, like you were saying earlier about how contemporarily speaking, a lot of times new shows or new movies, they'd have to add a character that Marty would have to come up with that they'd have to come up with to give him the info about the lightning bolt. In this scene, I feel like today they would have had a different scene where Marty would sit down, he'd have to think about all the different ways he could mess with George and he'd have to blueprint out some stupid shit that might not work. But they really just from like that scene, I think to him being in the bedroom, like with the yellow suit on, the mask down.
Yeah, they didn't show him like him planning it or going out and getting the suit and setting things up. It was just right to the bedroom scene, which is one of the things I was taught when you're writing a scene. You want to have people enter at the latest part that they can before it happens, and then you have them leave the scene as early as possible.
Right. So you don't overstay your welcome. Right. Exactly. So we already knew this dude had the radiation suit. So I don't need to be like, I don't know where that came from. That's a plot hole. Don't need that. We know he had the tape deck because he was wearing it at the beginning of the movie when he blew the amp.
And he
was
also
on the
had it
skateboard
when he
listening
rode
to
his skateboard to the mall to meet Doc.
Yep. That's what I'm saying. So like we already knew all that stuff was in play. We knew he had the video recorder because he was carrying it when he dove into the DeLorean, you know, in the first place. So when he ends up showing Doc, younger Doc on the TV, and he gets the gigawatt speech, like all these things already track because we know they're there, and they don't waste time going back to explain things, or they don't have some weird, looking at you, TLJ, like you were saying, some weird B plot where he has to break into like Hill Valley's first Radio Shack to get a prototype tape deck or something. Like no, he's got everything he needs. Let him be funny. Let the scene be funny. It doesn't need 6 jokes. It doesn't need an excruciatingly long setup. We don't need to overstay. He's like, I'm in, I'm out. I did the thing. And then literally the cuts to Marty's eating cereal and George is rolling up on him all disheveled. Like last night, Darth Vader was, he was drinking the Coke.
Yeah.
Last night, Darth Vader was going to melt my brain. Like, look, it's just boom, 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 done. You know? And he just pops the bottle open for him because Marty doesn't know about bottle openers.
What was the name of the diner keeper? He was like, Bill, milkshake, hold the straw, and he slides it down.
he gets the greasy hair.
Yeah.
But you remember what he says to Lorraine, though? This is a good thing. Because he was pumping Marty for lines, and Marty's all like kind of smooth. You know, you can tell he's had probably some success. Jennifer's an eye-opening gorgeous, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that in there as my first Jennifer. Dude. Well, second Jennifer was all right also. But first,
that's Elizabeth Shue. I mean, she was a more established actress.
But first Jennifer, who could not return for part 2 due to scheduling reasons. I'm like, what else were you doing? I don't know that you were that famous, but whatever. My God, was she gorgeous. But still, he's pumping Marty for lines, and then of course George screws them all up in front of her friends. Like it's every effing nerd nightmare ever. He's like, Lorraine, you are my density. Like, dude, pack it in, Marty. Just let the picture fade out, bro. You're better off.
You're my destiny. And then like she started buying it a little bit till Biff showed up.
Yeah. Oh yes. And this is the cap off. Dude, you know what? You got to give Marty some credit. You got to give Lorraine some credit too. You know, because she ended up laying hands on him. Was this the part where she slapped him outside the store?
Yeah, outside the store.
She was with the girlfriend with the dress.
Yeah,
she doesn't slap him here. But Marty steps to her right quick, does the shirt grab, and then again a little bit of technical video work. It's kind of funny. They're shooting over Biff's shoulder as he's standing up because Marty grabbed him while he was already standing. Or no, that's at the school. I'm thinking of dude, I'm mixing all my shit up.
Yeah.
At that scene where they're about to throw blows, like Biff keeps getting taller. Or is that no? That's when he tripped him. I'm all over the place. That's when he tripped him. They're over Biff's shoulder, and you can see Marty's eyes just over the top of Biff's shoulder as Biff keeps getting taller. And then he has to hit. What the hell is that? And then he throws the shoulder tackle, knocks them all over like dominoes, and kicks off one of the best chase scenes in movie history. I don't care. I said it. Awesome. Let's talk about the chase scene.
I gotta borrow this, and he rips off the top part, and then he takes off on the skateboard, and then of course
the music.
The famous them crash into the manure.
There's so much great stuff in that too. Like again, with it's the hero messing up. Like he's doing the skating thing, but he bumps into somebody and knocks the papers down, and he's down. Got to get up quick. Biff's red breathing down his neck. They catch up again. Biff right up on his ass to the point where Marty has to turn around on the skateboard and like put his hands on the hood so he doesn't get run down. And then you get second hero play of the movie, where it's like, dude, they cue the music, it hits its crescendo, and what does he do? He shoots the skateboard under the car, jumps over the hood, runs through the car, lands on the board, and then these assholes hit the manure truck.
Yeah.
It's too good. Like, it's too good. There's nothing like that today when I watch, because I think of stupid shit like the Skittle Squad scooter scene from the Kenobi show, and I'm like, okay, I watched these guys crash into poo. This is all you got? Like, it just doesn't work. It's not exciting, dude. I just watched that shit 2 hours ago, and it was as exciting today as it was in like 86 or 87 whenever the tape came out and I saw it. You know? Like, there's nothing like that anymore.
And then that whole stunt, though, undid everything he had George do as well, because she
made it worse.
Yeah, she's looked out there like, who's that? She's like, that's Calvin Klein.
I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. Right? I'm like, that's. And again, and that this is where it gets even monkey wrenched further, because as the movie goes through, she shows up at Doc's lab when they're working on the DeLorean, coming up with the plan Doc showed him the scale model, and he goes, I apologize for I didn't have time to paint it. And I'm like, that's funny. That's a Ghostbusters level line. You know what I mean? About when the old guys, they're all getting on the elevator when they're all geared up, and the old guy's like, I'll take the next one. Like that. It's like that. You know what I mean? It's like, that's 80s. I miss that.
You know? And someone saw a cockroach on 10. Must have been a hell of a cockroach.
Must have been a hell of a cockroach. You know? I love that. That's the 80s, bro. That's what they did. But Lorraine pops by and we realize we've got bigger cluster based on what you were just talking about, where she's like, you know, and again, against what the mom said earlier, I never asked out a boy. It's like, you want to go to that dance to Marty?
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah.
I never parked with a boy. I never drank.
Never called a boy. I don't smoke. And then they show up to this effing dance later and she's smoking, drinking, and ready to throw down in the back seat. I'm like, okay, mom's been around.
Yeah. And then it was like, you sound like my mother. And he's like,
I know, dude, it was so weird. Yeah, I mean, you know, the only thing that was funny weird, but I'm to this day still kind of creeped out in that part when she throws the kiss on him and realizes, and she's like, there's something weird going on here. I don't know what it is, because she could. There's no way.
It's like kissing
you know what I mean?
my brother.
It's like kissing my brother. And it's like, I'm like, okay. And then of course the awkward tension gets broke because that's the Biff show up is at that exact minute when he thinks George is finally there. But
yeah, there was a whole setup of him, like he was supposed to be getting handsy with her, and George comes to save her, and then it ends up being
they had a whole scene for that, right? Marty had that whole scene with George right around that like 3/4 point where, you know, George is hanging laundry. I'm like, this is, again, they're doing, it's not feelings in hallways, they're just hanging laundry. It gives me something to watch while you're talking about the plot at work. Nothing crazy. But he's like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. This chick needs to fall in love with you. She wants to go with you to the dance. She just doesn't know it. I'm going to make it so you end up finishing the dance with her. And George is like, how are you going to do that? And Marty's like, well, I'm going to do something that nice girls don't like. And then George, who's probably 17, 18, is like, you're going to touch her on her. And he starts like mini hyperventilating. I'm like, dude, again, Marty, just let the fucking picture fade. You're better off. This version of your old man is terrible. But like they worked that whole plan out where Marty's basically like, I'm gonna, you know, get a little frisky, and then you're gonna open the door and you're gonna be, hey, you get your damn hands off her. And he goes, do you think I have to swear? Fucking Jesus, George, yes, swear, whatever you're gonna do. Like, I love them two really. They did it. The back and forth was nice between them two, almost as good as the Doc and Marty banter. I like when he was working with his dad. But there was some good work there. But
and then it had the whole change, the event that changed his whole life. When he's thinking it's the setup with him and Marty, but it's actually Biff is there, and like Biff has.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. We will absolutely get to that. Because there's one more thing. I think there's one more big scene that kind of comes up as we're getting in there, and it has to do with they're getting ready to go. The DeLorean's covered. I think Doc towed it into where it needed to be, like into that part of town where it needed to be, so it'd be ready for him to use. No, Marty took it to the dance. Never mind. Scratch that. Yeah. I'm thinking of the part where Marty's writing the letter, because Doc already told him he was gonna tell him, hey, you know, I got to tell you something about the future. And Doc's like, Marty,
no, he covers his ears.
No, that's at the end. That's when he rips the letter. Previously, he would been like, I need to tell you something. Doc's like, no, I'll find out in the due course of time. Like he was all peaceful about it at first. So then Marty writes the letter and it's like, dear Doc, I got to tell you, when I go back on the night, you know, you're going to be shot. Please take precautions. And when he tries to give Doc the letter right before during the lightning storm or whatever, Doc's like, no, he finds the letter.
Yeah, he slides it into his lab coat.
Right. And then Doc's like, no, I'll fucking find out. You can't it's space-time continuum. Yada yada, fate, what is the whole speech? And then of course there's literally no time to argue at that point. So Marty just has to hope for it. But then he has that realization and he's like, damn it, if I only had more time. Well, damn it, if I need all the time I want, I got a damn time machine. And he sets it for 5 minutes early. Like, bro, why don't you set it for the fucking day before?
Or an hour before.
5 minutes seems specifically too close to have a meaningful impact. Because then as we saw, it wasn't enough time anyway. Like he miscalculated based on when he re-arrives in 85
and where he arrived at. Because remember, he's not going to be arriving back at the mall. He's going to be arriving downtown because it's where you take off from.
Right. So I mean, he had himself a nice little hike to go, and then when he gets there, he falls down the hill anyway, which I thought was, I was always like, dude, you just fell down in the horror movie, bro. It's like Jason Voorhees was chasing this dude and he fell down the landscaping. Like, bro, you got to be better than that. But So let's talk the dance, because I think there's a lot of great stuff that comes up at the dance scene as well, like we were just saying, where Marty's there, he's all dressed up, he's got Lorraine in the car. She reveals who her true character is basically like Cougar on prowl 20 years early, because she's already and hussied up for this date. Believe that's gonna happen. And we go through the whole thing where she's picking out the smokes. She's swiped it from the old lady's liquor cabinet. She's got a little flask going on. Marty's like, Jesus, what the hell is going on? This is my mother. What the hell? And she literally says, dude, you're acting. Anybody who's anyone drinks and smokes, like, don't be a square. Like, she lays it on him pretty thick, and he's just like, I don't know what the hell to do here. And before he can activate the plan, she throws the move on him.
Yeah,
and you're like, what is going on with this woman? Well, teenage girls, dude.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your big part comes up here, where he finally thinks he's getting the reprieve because the door gets pulled open when Lorraine's getting handsy, and this giant ass hand comes in and grabs like his entire shirt, the whole thing, yanks him, and you're like, oh fuck, it's Biff.
Yeah, and he gets hit.
Boy.
He gets punched twice, and then the minions take him off and throw him in a trunk somewhere.
Which it was the trunk of the band, and this comes into play in a little bit. So we've got more. There's plenty more to talk about, dude. We got plenty more. So Biff, who we know is a registered sex offender, probably a level 2, maybe even a level 3. He's gonna reoffend, right? He gets in the car with Lorraine, and this part legit to this day makes me uncomfortable to watch. Because even as a kid, you're like, no, this don't seem like it's a good thing. Nope. And he's literally getting handsy. She's like crying out handsy, and I'm like, nope, this is no good. So fucking George McFly, take it away.
Yeah, George comes out thinking that's going to be Marty. He opens the door and he's like, "Hey, you, get your damn hands!" And then he sees that it's Biff. He said, "I think you got the wrong car. Go away, McFly." And he's like, "No, Biff, you get your damn."
Wait! You missed a line. You missed a line.
I did that.
And it's an important. Yes, you did. It's an important one too. Yes, you did. Lorraine sits up in the front seat where she had been pressed down and begs him to help her.
Yeah.
That's a massively important line, because that's the connection point for him at that point. And then hers comes later when he starts to walk away. No, he doesn't. You're right.
No.
You're right.
He's like, no, Biff, you get your damn hands off.
He nuts up.
And then he's like, what is it? And he gets out and he grabs his arm and he twists it. Yep. And he's there, and then she comes up and tries to save him, and he pushes her down. He sees her pushed down. He sees everyone laughing, and then he just you see him look up with his arm twisted, and he just comes around with this roundhouse.
Dude, he balled that fist back I can't even twist the 270 degrees I need to, but that shit took about 4 days to come up and over. And it blew him up.
It was like One Punch Man, ran around the road and hit somebody.
Cue the John Cena theme song for the guy in that moment. You know what I mean? He blew Biff up, spun him around, and put him down. Love it. Now, side note, what I love in part 2 in that scene is other future Marty comes by and takes his wallet, or he takes the almanac, but the guy's like, hey, I think that guy took his wallet. I'm like, that's pretty funny. I always do get a kick out of that in part 2. But yeah, and then of course Lorraine locks eyes with George, and they have their first connective moment, because they almost mess it up. Because when we get into the final bit of the finale, the dance is on, Marty's doing his thing, but because the band helped spring Marty out of the trunk, the lead singer, one of their lead guitar players,
who's also the lead singer,
cut his hand really bad with a screwdriver, Jimmy, in the trunk.
Because he's like, "Where's the keys?" He's like, "The keys are in the
trunk.
In here." What was that? The keys are in here.
Right. So they break him out. The band scare away the racist dirtbag minions that Biff had with him, because I think at one point one of the guys gets out of the car after they throw Marty in, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing in my car?" And one of these dickweeds says, "Yeah, this got nothing to do with you, spook." And then all the fucking doors open, and all 6 dudes get out, and like, "What'd you say to me, boy? Better run home to your mama, Peckerwood." Dust some up one. So they run him off. Marty gets out and goes, "Oh, we gotta get back to the band." And they're like, "Bro, dance is over, man. Fucking dude's hand is cut up. Unless you know someone that plays the guitar." And payoff.
Yeah.
And payoff. And it's probably one of the best payoffs in the movie.
But everything is still not great, because they have to do their first kiss. And then they have the part where there's another antagonist in there who comes in and he cuts in and he pushes he just
George.
pushes him to fly away. And then George kind of he's trying to shy away, and you see like Marty starting to disappear, and like he's missing chords on there. Like even the singer's like
the Earth Angel. It sounds awful. Yeah. One of them asks, "Hey, do you all right, boy?" One of them asked
and
him,
and he sits down and he's like, George.
Yep.
And then you just had the moment where he comes up, pushes him down, and he's like,
yep. And of course, it's to the crescendo note of Earth Angel, and then they kiss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
then the
scene,
Marty moment where he's just like down, he looks up, he stands up, and he's like back on key, not missing a chord,
strumming him out. Dude, I love that. When Marty goes down, though, I have to go back and look. I think she's saying George because she's calling over the guy's shoulder. Marty says dad. And again, dude, I fall for the dad son moments and all that. We talk about the Miles Morales one with his dad all the time in Spider-Verse. He says dad when he's down. It crushes me every time I see it. You know, but like so they're sacked up. You know, George's life has changed from that moment because we got people coming up to him talking about, hey, I heard you laid out Biff. Nice work. You should run for student council. Like it's all changing now. In that moment, that's all changed. And then, they get the applause for Earth Angel. And then the band is like, hey, you got time for one more? You got anything you want to do? And he's got the idea for, of course, Johnny Be Good, which is probably one of the best guitar scenes in music movie history anyway, because it turns into a really good rendition of Johnny Be Good, but then it becomes like the electric metal version at the end. Yeah. And he gets that great line where he's like, you guys aren't ready for that, but your kids are going to love it. And I'm like, yes, indeed they did. Yes,
or the part where the lead singer is in the back. He's like, Charles, it's your cousin, Marvin Berry.
Yep.
You know that new sound you're listening for? Listen to this, which Charles, if you know, is Chuck. And Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
So
like king of Motown for those of you youngins that are listening. So and you would think at this point, right? Like this is it's like the movie could have ended there, but we still have this impetus that like he needs to get back to his time. Like it's not over. Biff wasn't the point of the movie. Yeah. Getting them back together wasn't even the point of the movie. Getting back to the future was the point to the movie. And the complication was the bit that he ruined his parents' like early relationship initially. So we got to get to that whole bit now. This is where they leave the dance. He's like, oh, if your kid sets the rug on fire, cut him some slack, this and that.
I had a feeling about you two kids.
Yeah. And they're all blushy and shit, and it's kind of cute. Marty leaves. He's changing his clothes. He's got the DeLorean. He gets to where he needs to go. And that's when he tries to have the talk again, and then he slips the letter. The doc finds it. He's like, not arguing, can't do it, rips it up, confetti, letters there. Doc doesn't know what's going to happen. And then, of course, the lightning starts, like the storm comes. So now there's no more time. And after a whole bunch of exciting crap where Marty drives to the other end of town, the car doesn't start and all that other totally Hollywood predictable crap.
Yeah.
We get the doc who's up in the clock tower trying to string the wire.
Because a branch fell and broke the wire.
But it sets up, again, some Indiana Jones shit from the 80s, which is awesome. Because you got the doc up there trying to rewire the clock. He's got lightning flashes on gargoyles, scaring the crap out of him, which is always funny because Christopher Lloyd's a funny guy.
Yeah.
He gets the face. It's funny. Right. And of course, he finally gets, he almost falls. He catches the plug on his pants. They start to rip. Like everything's going wrong. It's like he's almost lost it. He gets his foot up, catches it, doesn't reach, plugs it in, but what does it do?
It unplugs at the bottom.
Other shit. Right. And then here we go. He's looking like the DeLorean's coming. Nothing Marty can do. It's like 10:03. Doc in one of the most badass moves in 80s movie history, like coils it, like, and then rappel like lines. What's it called? Zip lines.
Zip lines down.
Zip lines. And he has to get down. You just have to get down. He has to get the wire, run
out
it
of
around
the tree,
right out of the tree, around the car, and he plugs it in at the exact minute like the lightning hits.
And then the car hits a second later.
And then the car hits a second later and they harness the gigawatt. And Marty goes back to the future. What a ride, dude. What a ride. They had a ride for this at Universal Studios like 30 years ago and it was awesome. I wish they'd bring it back.
I rode that thing. We went with the band when we went down there for the Magic Music Day when Mr. Tree and
I remember.
Yeah, and we went down there. It was the band trip. and we went
Yep.
to Universal. We marched Universal, and then we got to go in. And we had free tickets, and I think me and Alex Bonner, and a couple other guys, like we rode that ride like 7 times.
I believe it, dude.
Like while we were
great
there.
ride, wild fun. 'Cause it was one of those like the seating compartment area was like built to look like the DeLoreans. I mean, it was a small ride. Like you could only, I think it could only sit 3 or 4. I think it was as many people you could fit literally in the DeLorean. Like it's 2 up and 2 back. Mm-hmm.
And then it's like it was one of the very first like motion around you type rides.
Yep.
Whereas,
and
like,
it had the hydraulics too, it was moving you too.
Yeah, the screens was around you, and you move with like the camera movement, and like you feel it like it goes up and down. They have the wind blowing at you with the wind machines behind the screen.
Soundtrack booming.
Yeah, it was a fun ride. It was one of the best rides at Universal at the time.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah, I wish they bring that out of retirement. Maybe give it the updated stuff with the 360-degree green screen stuff like Rise of the Resistance. That'd be pretty dope. But there's a little bit more to the movie that we can talk about because Marty gets back to the future. We sadly get there a little late, even though he gave himself the more time. He gets to Doc just in time to see him take a bunch of AK-47 fire and go down in a heap. And we get 80s movie magic once again. He gets down there, he gets over to the body. He's like, oh, Doc, and he's tearful, crying, and everything. And then Doc moves. And we see why. Explain why Doc survived 18 rounds from an AK-47.
Yeah, he was like, Doc, what did you do? And he looks down and he pulls open his was it lab coat he had on? Or
he had this nuclear jumpsuit. He had the jumpsuit.
Yeah, he had the nuclear suit, radiation suits. And he opens up. He has a bulletproof vest on.
Tier 3 vest, playing the war zone.
Which actually they didn't have bulletproof vest that could stop a 7.62 round at the time.
No shot.
it still works. It's believable.
Movies, bro. Movies.
And he's like, how did you know? And he pulls out the letter all taped up. He's like, what about the paradox, the space-time continuum? He's like, I thought, what the hell?
Yeah, what the hell? But I love that. And this ties into a nice little bit of like the behind the scenes that I just wanted to hit on quick too. That line delivered by Marty in that moment, he's like, how did you know? Like there was like some, it was kind of comedic, but it was also serious because we knew we were getting that joke response. And the reason why they brought Michael J. Fox in, he originally was offered the part, as I understand it, but he was busy with family ties, so he wasn't available. So they brought in Nick Stoltz, Eric Stoltz, Nick Stoltz, one of the Stoltzes, right? Who was famous for having just been in The Mask like the year before. But after about a month of shooting, they were like, he doesn't really have the comic chops. He's too method. It's not really the energy we're looking for. Like, this isn't supposed to be a serious drama like Mask. It's supposed to be quirky, upbeat 80s, Goonies, E.T., like this kind of thing, so they finally get Marty McFly in there because Michael J. Fox, who we know has comedic chops from a bunch of things he's done.
Yeah.
But did you know also in the running for that were C. Thomas Howell and Ben Stiller? I'd never heard that up in the role for Marty McFly.
I didn't know that either. But did you hear like Marty's life or Michael J. Fox's life at that time?
He wasn't big in the drugs at that point, right? Was he into the cocaine scene and things?
No. He was filming Family Ties at night, and then he would go.
Yes, they would drive him.
And they would drive him from one set to the other
That's
set.
Right.
Why he's getting tutored, his required tutoring, because he's still
a
child actor at the time.
Yep.
For his high school en route from one set to the other, he's getting maybe 2 to 3 hours sleep a night.
And that's why we invented child labor laws for Hollywood. Yeah. I do remember that when you just mentioned that up.
Yeah, his life was pretty hectic, but something freed up in his schedule, and he agreed on, and they reshot. They were like a month and a half into production.
Oh, dude, they were deep.
When they
I was reading earlier, they were like 5-6 weeks.
And
they say some of that footage is still out there, and some of it is actually in the movie that I thought I was reading. Some of the shots of the Marty character from behind. It might be some of those early shots at Doc's lab, or when he's or behind or rear shots on the skateboard. I don't remember. I think it's out there somewhere that if you know where to freeze frame, you can see where it's not him and it's not a stunt double. But when he gets back.
The other part that was real funny that we kind of skipped was in the diner, and they had the one kid cleaning up, and he's
the mayor,
and he's like, he's like, I'm gonna be somebody. He's like, that's right, you're gonna be mayor. He's like, I'm gonna be mayor, and he's like trying to like straightens up.
Mayor Goldie. Wilson. That's the funny shit. But again, it's a setup and a payoff because when we see Marty in 85, when he gets back, the truck's running around with signs up. This is re-elect Mayor Goldie Wilson.
Yeah.
Better civics, better this, blah, blah, blah. And that's just in the background. You know what I mean? So it's all those little legitimate like touches that they put in there that show you they're paying attention to the world they're building. I don't know how we skipped over. That was a great scene because the diner owner was like, "Oh my God, a colored mayor. That'll be the day." And he's like, "You'll see. I'll be somebody." And then that's what happened.
Yeah.
So when they get back to 85 after they resolved and Doc's alive and everything else, Marty goes home. He gets dropped off, and the doc just drops him off at that point. He goes in the house. He goes to sleep. When he wakes up, he notices shit's a little different. House is a little different even.
So it's a little cleaner.
Car's not wrecked up in the driveway. Gets out of bed. No one's home. House is really bright this time. You know what I mean? Really nice. And mom and dad walk in. Mom and dad look like they just stepped off the cover of like a magazine shoot. They're all in good shape.
They're coming from the club. They have tennis rackets.
Tennis. Yep. They love each other apparently because he gets her a little pat on the backside. And
they
Marty's
have
like,
a hug
what's going on? Yep. The brother comes in and Marty's like, "Oh, what about the mom asked, are you going to take Jennifer up to the lake in the car?" And he's like, "Oh, what? The car, it's wrecked." And mom's like, "It's not wrecked." And the brother's like, "Who told me? Nobody told me the car is wrecked." And he's got a suit on.
Yeah.
And Marty's like, "Dude, what are you wearing?" He's like, "I always wear a suit to the office." And even the daughter who didn't have a lot really character wise to do, I think they dressed her up that the glasses are gone. I think if I remember her in the scene right, she doesn't look as nerdy as like 80s nerdy because they wanted to give the impression that everybody was now living like a better standard of life because of the little changes that he kind of instilled. And
then you have the second part of it. He's like, "It's not wrecked." And then they come out there. There's Biff putting the second coat on it. Right?
Oh yeah.
He's like, "There's Biff." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Have you put the second coat on it?" He's like, "Yeah, I have." "Are you sure, Biff? Because the last time, I mean, I was just starting the second coat."
Don't con me.
He's like, "Biff,
and he's
always trying to get one over."
That's the best part is he's a dork. He's all like, "Oh my God, I forgot." Like he's broken. Like George popped him once 30 years ago and he's cooked. Like that was enough. And then of course Marty goes outside and we get the last little great bit of like setup payoff. He opens the old school garage door, not the one that folds up. Like he's got to lift the whole plank up, you know what I mean, to open it out. And of course he's got the 4x4. And the best part of that scene again is he looks back to the house and who's in the doorway? Remember?
His mom and dad.
Just his dad. It's just his dad.
I thought his dad both of them.
If it's both, it's George, the one that kind of gives him the look and then closes the door to give him his moment.
He's hugging his mom and his dad.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. Yep. So it's like, I'm like, all right, I got you, Dad. All right, I love you.
There's also the thing the first when he's 85 original, he's like, "I don't like that girl," and now it's like he's talking about. He's like, "Aren't you going to the lake with Jennifer? I really liked that girl."
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The whole world is like completely butterfly effect his way. Like it all broke his way because like it delivered the promise of the premise, which was history is going to change, and then it did for the better because he did all the right hero stuff along the way. You know what I mean? So I think it's a good all around kind of thing. I think if I had to give this movie any kind of nitpick about it, would be like it's not genre, so it's not that you can call Marty like a Mary Sue or anything like that. But like he doesn't really have
hard for it.
I'm saying, I mean, he definitely put himself on the line to get everything moving, but like he doesn't have any flaws except for the self-doubt, and none of that really impacts him in 1955 when he goes back. Like he could because he can't because George absorbs that role. You know what I mean? But in like part 2, we get the whole his future self loses a job. The temper becomes like a thing. He lost his job. He broke his hand. Yes, exactly. I broke my hand in a car crash. So I had to give up music. Now my temper is going to get me fired because somebody called me chicken on the job and I was going to defraud the company, but I got caught. You know what I mean? That stuff creeps in part 2. I don't know that it's missing from part 1. And I don't think it needed it because of the kind of movie it was trying to be. Like Brandon in the Goonies didn't have a character flaw. Not Mikey didn't have a character flaw. I mean, do you really need one in that kind of
when you're 13?
Genre kid adventure kind of friends movie? I don't think you need that. But I don't know. I can't. I mean, I honestly couldn't. There's nothing I couldn't nitpick about this. As we get to our wrap up here. Did anything strike you as like things that like I mean, who am I to critique the masters, dude?
Yeah,
You know?
I agree that this is one of the best scripts with setup, payoff. Everything that is set up always paid off. It always hit on time. It never seemed forced. You had likable characters. You had a true antagonist that you see his story arc even change in this. Like everybody's art, everyone is different from when the story started to when the story ended, as you're supposed to. So yeah, this goes down with like Citizen Kane. It goes down with Godfather 2, Godfather, all the true classics of cinema. This movie falls right in line with it and doesn't miss it, like straight lockstep with them all.
Is this top 5 for you? Like if I put you on the spot, is this it's got to be top 10. There's no shot it's not your top 10.
Oh yeah, it's definitely top 10. The other two of the franchise probably don't break my top 10. But the first one definitely does. Yeah, it's a movie you can watch over and over again and not get tired of. It's like Die Hard at Christmas. It's not Christmas until Hans Gruber falls off the Nakatomi Tower.
Fact. I have the advent calendar that suggests that.
So do I. I showed it to you last year when we were doing this show.
Indeed. I believe I picked one up after that fact. Excuse me again.
That was a gift from my wife too. So that's pretty awesome.
Slapping good gift. Yeah. So that's Back to the Future, I think, hits my top 5. I'm not sure I can get it into the 3, but I probably could be persuaded. Like if I had to sit down and write that list up, I could probably get it in a top 3 for me.
But the thing is, if we talk about our top 5, top 10, you know how many movies in the 80s and early 90s make up that list compared to anything made after 2000?
8 out of 10. Yeah. 8 out of 10. I can name the 2 off the top of my head. Lord of the Ring, Two Towers, and Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Those are the 2. Yep. Those are the 2. The other 8 are exactly like you said, dude. I got an indie in there. I got a Jaws in there. I got a Die Hard in there. There's some horror movies in there, I'm sure.
Top Gun.
Gonna do Top Gun, easily do Goonies. I would put in there, dude.
Goonies,
it could all be Spielberg. It could literally all be Spielberg. Empire. Before I fill out all my spots. I could put E.T. or Goonies, and that Goonies gets a lot of hate from people that I think we're too old to enjoy it. Like the older side of Gen X doesn't like it, but we're like the tail end of Gen X. Heading into like millennial territory. Like I like it. I don't care. I saw it at the right age, so it works.
It's like the Ewok thing. You could tell how old someone is if they like the Ewoks or don't like the Ewoks, because
you know what though?
People older don't like the Ewoks, so they're creepy. But younger people who, when it came out, like the Ewoks, are reminded of the teddy bears. Yep.
But for me, dude, I still like the Goonies today. The Ewoks, I don't like anymore as I've gotten older, because I recognize kind of the stupidity of having them in there instead of having them be the Wookiees like they should have been. Jedi becomes a very different movie if that shit's on Kashyyyk. Believe that.
Yeah.
Empire doesn't get away with only sending one Walker battalion down there. But that's a topic for a different day.
But those Ewoks fought with all their heart.
They do. They were the Rudy of Star Wars antagonists.
And then they turned their heads into drums.
And then they turned, but they were empty helmets. I looked.
Were they? Were they?
Now, some of them helmets in like Mando season 1 could have been dried and clean Stormtrooper helmets. Some of them had like puncture holes through the top and shit. Easily could have been piked. That's a fact. Yeah, I don't think those guys got off easy. But I don't know, man. Back to the Future is great. I'm just we'll do a rating just because it's easy. It's 10 out of 10.
Yeah, easy.
Okay, I said it. 10 out of 10. I don't need to discuss it. You guys can let us know in the comments below if we're wrong, but I'm probably not going to entertain them because you guys are dumb. If you think it's not. Not sorry on that one. Back to the Future right up there. But dude, that's been our talk on Back to the Future. We killed that hour without talking a whole lot about 2 or 3. Maybe that's for future discussions and additional slow news weeks, I think. Because I could talk about 2 and 3 for a hot minute. Maybe in 1. We might be able to combine them into like one other hour. But I think that's going to do it for us, guys. We appreciate you stopping on board for the ride. Let us know what you think, like I said, after the fact. Actually, more important question, where do you rank the Back to the Future trilogy? Probably should ask that up front in trilogy terms, like against other trilogies. How high up that list does it go for you guys?
Leave it in the comments.
Leave it in the comments, and I'll get King Z to answer that next week because we're out of time. King Z, hit him with our outro.
Well, see ya.